Me?
That ain't it.
I'm looking at both cameras.
I was gonna say that.
Yep.
Are you saving up for a car?
car.
No.
Nothing is wrong with you.
Don't you want peace?
Good grief. And just being able to express.
Hey y'all, welcome again to Your Safe Here podcast. You have Destiny here, and with me I have Lala and Miss
Energy.
All right, and today we are going to do a continuation of our last episode, which was Dear Black Men, and this time we're going to hear from the ladies, and we're going to get the ladies' perspective on I guess black men, toxic masculinity, and what we think black men need to hear in this day and age. All right. So to get it started, I want to know, what did you all have as an experience growing up? What did the boys around you get told, or what did you all see them being taught by the men around them?
Okay. Well, I can speak on like with my brothers. I know that we have that saying where we have our little boys and they're crying or whatever. You try to kind of shut them up a little bit because you tell them that, you know, all that crying and emotional stuff is kind of like punkish, or you know, you too sissified or whatever. And so they kind of grow up to be men who do not know how to express themselves properly because they were suppressed as kids.
Right.
Yeah, similar. I didn't have any siblings, but, you know, I had male cousins, male friends growing up. And from what I could tell, it was kind of the same thing. You know, you're encouraged to be tough, encouraged to be a man, which I think is confusing for a child. Like, how can you possibly? But, you know, just that kind of thing. Like, you know, don't cry, or, you know, toughen up. You know, big boys don't cry, encouraged to, you know, do boy things, whatever, you know, that is defined as. And, you know, it's, like you said, it's kind of, you can see the foundations and the building blocks of what becomes toxic masculinity, you know, that gets turned inward and gets turned outward towards others.
Okay. As far as toxic masculinity, how would you describe toxic masculinity, or what would you say is toxic masculinity?
I feel like it's really complex. I think that, you know, it's definitely a very hashtagable phrase right now. You know, people are talking about it, and they're talking about it for a reason. But I mean, toxic masculinity at its base is all of those behaviors or those ways of thinking that, you know, men or masculine performing people turn inward on themselves and outward towards the people around them, that, you know, can result in negativity or stress, or, you know, just adversity or strife, you know, in general. But it's so layered because a lot of those things, like we said, get imposed upon men. You know, we live in a patriarchal society that centers men and their feelings, and not even so much their feelings, their desires, right? Because if they were able to talk about, or had the place or space to talk about, or wanted to talk about their feelings more, I feel like maybe toxic masculinity wouldn't be quite so pervasive. But, you know, it's just the centering of all of those things, and the putting on the pedestal of the male ego. And because of that, it results and spreads and trickles down to so many different, like pretty much every aspect of our day-to-day lives, you know, at least in our culture and community.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what she said, toxic masculinity, I'm sorry. Toxic masculinity has everything to do with men just period being unhealed from the traumas that they've experienced as a young child. And then it trickles over to adulthood, and when they're trying to function in today's society, which is very demanding, they don't really have time to actually sit down and go within, kind of like how we get to do so as women. Men, they really don't have that time because they have so much going on. They might be taking care of a family now, or they might have a demanding career, and so they might not have the time to do so, or they might not even have the skill to actually sit down and go within and try to heal whatever wounds that, you know.
Well, it's like you said, though, there was something that you said about not being encouraged to do that. You know, for the most part, little girls are, if you're crying or if you're emotional or if you're feeling a certain type of way, we're given the space to have that, you know, hopefully comforted and nurtured in a positive way. Sometimes not so much, but for the most part, women, females, feminine performing people, you're allowed to be in your feelings.
Right.
And a lot of times, because of toxic masculinity, when we get older, that gets weaponized against us, which is ironic. But for the most part, you know, especially then, I'm hoping that things have changed now with new parents. You know, they're doing things differently. But, you know, when we were growing up, when our parents were growing up, when their parents were growing up, that environment was not fostered, and there was just no room for men to be human. You know, it's all part of the human experience. We're all complex beings, and we all need room to be able to feel and understand and process. And that's typically not the environment that is given to young men.
Okay, so what did your father or a father figure tell you about men and manhood, and would you say that you still hold some of those opinions, values that your father figure shed upon you, or you had to differ some things out?
I mean, there's so many things. My father, I feel like, he was good about being very real with me. Of course, there was still a lot of the protectiveness and, you know, keeping yourself for not necessarily. I don't know. It was different for me. I was given a lot of the same warnings, like, you know, don't let anybody touch you. You know, that's not supposed to. Like those basic fundamental things that you should tell a child.
Right.
I don't know that he necessarily imparted any of that toxicity to me, but he was also very hand in hand with raising me with my mom. And my mother, thankfully, was very open-minded, especially for a woman of her generation, you know. So they were just very honest with me, which was helpful. I think because of that, I looked up to my father so much that I wanted to find someone with the same type of ideals. I think what really changed for me, and I think changes for everybody, you go through that point in your life where you realize that your parents are human and you see their flaws. And he was a flawed man in ways that were in ways that shook me to my foundation. And I had to reconcile with that. I think it was more me realizing that the ideal that I had set up in him was not real. And because of that, I was able to be very realistic and accepting of the men that were in my life. But still, the example that he set curated the type of people that I would interact with for the most part, you know.
As for me, father figures in my life, what I was taught was like the basic, you know, you're the princess, or you're the one that's supposed to get taken care of, and, you know, just like the baseline stuff. And the opposite was told to my brothers, where, you know, you're the protector, whatever. But now that I'm a mother of boys, it's so important to me that I express to my boys that you're not only a protector and a provider, but your feelings matter also. And you're important also, you know? And so that's kind of what I can take away from what I was taught as a girl growing up. And now I'm a mother of boys, and I don't want to send my kids out in the world with that baseline old school mentality where it's like, I'm going to push my feelings aside and make sure that I'm like this for a woman, which you're supposed to treat a woman right. However, you also are valued and valuable as well as a man.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, excuse me. So, I guess looking at, like you said, you're, I guess, curating in your boys that they are valuable. They do matter. What is it that you tell men and boys around you that makes them feel safe, or makes them feel like they can express themselves or have that safe space around you?
It's the actions. I show love, and I'm very affectionate with my boys. And that's just me teaching them by action how to I guess, love someone or how to show love.
Mm-hmm.
But I also sit down and I talk to my son and I tell my son what to expect in a woman, what not to expect in a woman, how to be as a man to women, how to be respectable, but also how to respect himself. And also when my kids express any type of emotion, because there's another thing that I saw my mom do to my child one day, and he expressed to her that she missed and hit him. Mm-hmm. You know how kids are. Grandma, you hit me. Mm-hmm. And she was just like, no, I didn't hit you, and stop whining. But I said no, because in his reality, he was hit by you. Mm-hmm. So don't dismiss it. Right. Explain to him, I didn't mean to do that if you felt like I did, which is validating his feelings. Yeah. So every time my kids express anything, I validate their feelings. And I explain, and I listen to them explain. And I feel like that's so vital with being parents for little boys and little girls. It's making sure that you validate them.
Okay.
I agree. I'm sorry. I was listening to you. What was the original question? I'm agreeing completely with everything that you're saying.
What do you tell the men and boys around you today that make them feel safe or curate a safe space for them?
I try to do the same thing. Just listening, being respectful of someone's feelings, being respectful of someone else's experience. And, I in general, I don't think of life in terms of male or female. I'm just like, you're another human being. And I want to have respect for you the way that I would like for you to have respect for me. And you just have to check yourself. I mean, that's my rule. I always check myself first, and try to be understanding of where somebody might be coming from. Even if there is a man that is approaching me with toxicity, I mean, I'm not going to let you disrespect me, but I don't immediately go on the defensive and want to fight you, because if you feel like we're in a situation and, you feel like I'm being an angry woman, if I respond to you in that way, this is not going to move the conversation further. Now, if I realize that we can't have a conversation, then I'm going to remove myself. But I will do that with anybody. I'm not going to fight with anybody. Yeah. That's not, I'm too grown. But, I try to approach people with compassion and really just understand that everybody is having this life experience together. None of us knows what the fuck is going on. And we just have to do the best that we can. Right. I try to be really compassionate. When it comes to my husband, who is the man that I spend the most time with, I really try to encourage, and I've always tried to encourage him to feel like I am a safe space. Like, you can tell me anything. We can talk about anything. Tell me how you're feeling. I'm going to do my best to respect you. Even when we argue, we are respectful of one another. And that takes time. Time and maturity and just growing together. It's not everybody that you can have that level of compatibility with, so I'm grateful for that in him, because I definitely, we've been together for a while, long time, but before that, the men that I would date, that wasn't always the case. I've dated and been around emotionally immature men, and it makes it very difficult to even approach those conversations when that person is not even willing to meet you at the table. But especially when you're talking about men who've been raised traditionally in that way, it's like there's so much between them and the table. Yes. It's like, of course you're having a hard time getting here to sit down with me. I'm not going to cradle your feelings, because mine are valid too, but I really try to approach people with compassion, because this shit is hard.
It is, and we all have different perspectives in life as well, which is something that I had to realize as an adult. Because you can be in the same household with someone and they can be having a whole other experience of life than you. So, like you said, when you approach a situation and you try to step back and be understanding first, instead of being, hot-headed or, just go off, you try to kind of put yourself in a position where you try to put yourself in their shoes and try to figure out, okay, well, what's really going on? Why is this person presenting themselves as, with toxic energy towards me? Right. It has to be something that's underlying.
Right. Oh, okay, wow. I thought she was going to keep going. I was into it. Okay. So, what is it that you spoke about your husband. What are those qualities that you look for necessarily in your husband, and I guess any of the men that you might interact with or date or entertain? What are those qualities, and what does that look like?
That we look for specifically in them, or that we recognize, just those things, the ability to communicate. You know, I appreciate people who can at least take the step to go on the journey within. You know, understanding the self is a lifelong endeavor, right? But men or women, but people who find it difficult to even get to that place, or don't want to delve into the depths or deal with their trauma, you know, like you said, process those things. I find it difficult to interact with them in any meaningful kind of way, because we're not having an authentic experience. So, you know, it's just, and that's how I approach all people. But those are the things that I appreciate specifically in my husband. He, you know, we were talking before we started the show, he's an educator. I love how patient and compassionate and understanding, and he has all these qualities that make him a brilliant educator, but really just a great person. And that's hard to find at all. And I admire that in him, because sometimes, you know, he comes home and tells me these stories about his children, and I'm like, it could not be me. I would have burned the school down. So, you know, I appreciate that in him, and those qualities in him over the years have helped me to grow. You know, though I look for people, whether it's partner, friendship, working relationship, I want people around me that I can learn from and that can make me better. We can enhance each other's life experience. If I can't learn anything from you, or if the only time we can get together is to do, you know, real surface, shallow shit, that's fine. But I'm not going to invest my time in that sort of relationship.
Yes, that's so true. And another thing for me is accountability. Somebody that
say
would be able...
closer to the mic, please.
Accountability.
Gosh, yes, I'm sorry.
But a man that knows when to take responsibility and accountability for his actions.
Absolutely.
And not only take accountability, but try to change and adjust his behavior, or maybe a trait that he has that may be toxic.
Right.
So yes,
just identifying that, and again, just being willing. You know, because it's hard. It's hard to see yourself, acknowledge your traumas, acknowledge the ways that you've been mistreated, acknowledge how those toxic behaviors have manifested in you, and then become part of who you are.
Yes, and know that it doesn't make you weak when you realize that within yourself, because we're not perfect.
Right.
Everybody has flaws. Everybody has traumas that we have to deal with and heal from. It's just the fact that you see that within yourself and you strive to make yourself better.
Yes.
Not only for your family, your wife, your colleagues, your friends. You know, you're just making yourself better.
And you do it for
yourself.
yourself.
And a man that does that is beautiful.
Yes. Agreed.
So I was having a conversation with a partner not too long ago, and I said that I think sometimes men make it harder on themselves than we do as Black women. Or I think Black men make it harder on themselves than we do as Black women. And I say that as in a Black man will say, I can't do this because I'm supposed to be the provider, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do everything. And it's, for me, I might look at it as, well, how do you know what a provider is to me? My definition of a provider and your definition of a provider might be completely different.
Exactly, yes.
So how do we have these conversations with these men who may not know, like, hey, maybe I am trying to overcompensate, or maybe I am putting way too much pressure on myself. How do we have those conversations, and what do you say to them during this time?
You just be honest with them and sit down and just let them know, because like you said, communication is a major key in forming a strong relationship and a strong foundation. So if you can sit down and you have a man that is willing to listen to you and not just hear you, but really understands you and where you're coming from, you can have that conversation and make him aware, like, look, you don't have to do all of this, because this is what I feel a provider is, and you're doing all these 10 things, and I really only need just 5.
Right.
So go ahead and take away 5 of those things.
Right. Let me help you.
Yes. And then let's, kind of get stressed, because with our Black men, they are very weighed down with this world. And if we can sit down and communicate with them, create a safe space for them, let them know that they're valued, let them know that if there's anything that I can do to lessen the load, because sometimes the way that our Black men have been raised, no, you don't touch that because that's my responsibility.
Exactly.
I understand that that's your responsibility, but let me help you. I'm here to be your helpmate. I'm here to be your partner. I'm here to be your best friend. I'm here to be your lover. So let's do this together.
Right.
So your load isn't heavier than mine. We have the same equal load. So you're not going to bed with the weight of the world on your shoulders, and I'm just laying on my pillow like
feeling light.
And then you're taking, because you don't want me to feel that.
Right.
But I'm a woman. I'm strong.
Yeah.
I can bear the brunt of whatever I need to bear if it makes your life easier and my life, easier as well.
I agree. Communication, creating that safe space, and getting to a point in your relationship with with the man in your life where you can say, especially if he has a background like that, I understand what you're used to. This is what I want to provide for you. And something you said earlier about your children, showing that, because sometimes communication is more than verbal, right? You have to show and make an example, and sometimes have the conversation more than one time, because these are walls and barriers that we're having, like years, decades sometimes, of that toxicity that we're trying to break down, and just let your person know, you can come to me, I can help you, we can do this together. And I think it's also important to be honest about how you're feeling. Don't suppress what you're feeling. If you feel a way about something, if you're upset about something, if something has you concerned or worried or triggered, I have to communicate that with you, because how else is he gonna know?
Exactly.
You have to talk to each other, and that can be difficult, especially when you have 2 different backgrounds where that might not necessarily have been encouraged, or that might not have been the example that was set in the home. There are a lot of things that my husband and I have worked through, and work that I've done on myself because of the environment that I came from, that was very loving, very nurturing, but the relationship between my mother and father, they had communication issues. And because of that, it set up a lot of blockages and triggers for me that I didn't even realize until I got to be a whole adult. And I was like, why is it so difficult for me to deal with this? Why is it so difficult for me to say this? It shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And then, those are barriers that we had to work through together. My husband helped me through that too. And even before we were married, as my partner, as my boyfriend, as the person that I was seeing, we evolved into the kind of partnership where we could we could be safe spaces for each other. I feel safest in the world when I'm with my husband. And it's not just because he's my husband, it's because he's the person that he is, and the space that he's created for me. And I felt like that was important, because once I realized those traumas that I had that were blocking me, I was like, well, I want to work against that, because as great of an example as my parents were in many ways, there were a lot of things that I could point out and identify and say, okay, I'm not going to do that. And I don't know, I'm going to do something else. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want this result. I don't want to have to deal with those same stresses that I saw my mother go through, or saw my father go through, because of that lack of communication between them.
Okay. So, when you are around, let me see, how should I say you're around a man who is not, I guess he's not in touch with himself, he's not in touch with his emotions, he's just full on toxic, he's determined that he's going to be toxic, not going to listen. How do you handle being in a space with that type of person?
I will typically remove myself. My husband is over there smirking because he knows I'll leave. I leave situations like that. But if I have
and why is that you would leave?
Because with the type of person that you're talking about there, the type of man that you're talking about there, he can't be communicated with typically. And that's the key. If we're not going to be able to talk or have some sort of dialogue or have some sort of discourse, even if we don't agree. If we can't even talk, then what am I doing? I'm not going to stay here and be abused. And I'm not going to stay here and bear witness to your toxicity. If there's somebody else that might be the target of that toxicity, I might try to help that person. Yeah. But I'm not going to talk to him. For what? Because then we're going to fight. And then it's going to be a problem. And my husband's going to have to calm down to where it's just going to be a situation. Actually, I could just go. I remove myself because I don't deal well with that just blind toxicity. I can't manage that because I'm not going to allow myself to be abused, but I'm not going to bear witness to that.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I mean, it all depends on the situation, and it all depends on how severe it is.
Right.
Because in a relationship, I'm not going to stay in something like that. I've tried it for 8 years before, and it didn't work.
I tried it for 5.
It was not good at all. However, I would still hold a space of compassion for them and understanding. But I'm going to draw my boundaries. And then they can stay out there.
Yeah.
So in that space of compassion, I realize that some men are dealing with or have dealt with women that do not curate these safe spaces for them, that do tell them, oh, you're weak for having feelings, you're this and you're that, or you're less than a man because of this and because of that. So what is it that I guess even a man should say to a woman that is like that or has that feeling?
Well, a woman that's saying that to a man, she's not evolved or healed herself. For her to say that, because a true woman that is evolved and that's bettering herself is not going to belittle anyone.
Right.
So what a man can possibly say to her, I mean, you can help her try to heal whatever she needs to heal. If you're in love with that woman and if that woman is who you feel like is your one, help her out. Help her get to where she needs to be. If not, remove yourself because, of course, you're valuable as well. So you should not be with someone that's going to belittle you and put you down because that person, like I said, hurt people. So if you can open your mouth and you can tell a man that you're weak because you're showing me emotion, because that man is probably seeing something within you or seeing potential within you and trying to push you forward, and you're just wanting to stay stagnant and you're knocking him down. Okay, well, he can leave you and then you can see him excel and you stay in the same spot, or that man can help you along because we have toxic females just as well as we have toxic men. And men can do the same thing, create a boundary. Men need boundaries too and standards too, high at that, and so do women.
Agreed. I agree with that completely. And my only hope for a man like that in that type of situation is that he can come out of it healthy, whatever the result is. Not internalize it because there's already so much internalized toxicity, among men, among Black men specifically. They don't need no more. No.
So, I guess final couple of questions. What is it that you think the Black men need to hear today? Black men in your life, Black boys in your life, anyone listening to this podcast, what do they need to hear?
That they're not a monster, like how society paints them. They're not a monster. You're not a monster. And despite what society tries to show you, Black women love Black men. We're not mad at the 1% that goes outside the race. We don't care about none of that. You guys are loved. You guys are valued in our eyes. You're special. Black men are one of the strongest, most beautiful men on this planet. Period. And the way that they're portrayed in society is horrible. And so the one thing that we can do as Black women is become what we need to become for them, to let them know that they're safe, to let them know that they're loved and cared for. And just as well as they protect us, we will protect you.
Yes. I agree 100%. All of those things. You know, we have to let them know that we love them, that it's okay and it's safe to feel their feelings. Feel your feelings, process your feelings. Feel okay with going to therapy if that's what you need to do. I will support you. I will love you. You are safe here. You are valuable. You know, and start from an early age, just like, you know, generations before us that instilled a lot of that toxic negativity into little boys. Start from the beginning. We need more mothers like you, and I believe that there are a lot of us out there. I believe that, but you know, we, like you said, we can't go by what the media wants to portray, because that's not even a real reflection of our culture and our society. We know that, and so we need to be loud and affirming in that, and tell our little boys, yes, you can cry, yes, you can feel, yes, you are valid, you are not a monster.
Exactly.
I love that you said that, because they are quick to villainize and just demonize, you know, little black boys, and that infuriates me, and that's what results in so many of our youth dying and being killed and hunted by those factions that are fearful of them. Let them know, yes, you are a king. I don't care who doesn't like it. Own that. That is your bloodline. That is your inheritance. That is who you are. And be proud about it. And also instill, you need to take accountability.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, because the world is going to tell you that all of this is yours. And while it is, it's ours too.
Exactly.
You do not need to assert your dominance because you already are here. Affirm them, validate them, let them know that they are loved and that they have a safe space to be in us.
Okay, so that was deep. I like it. I got chills over here. So, I would say to black boys around me, everything that y'all said, y'all are valuable, you're loved, we appreciate you, we care about you, we care for you, we need you. There's not I don't think any of us here, well, shoot, obviously none of us could be here without the help of a black man. So,
100%.
I was like, we need these black men, we need you all to evolve with us, because we can't be the only ones that are learning and unlearning and evolving our children, our families, and advancing our communities. So we are calling on you all to come and work with us, work on yourselves together with us, for yourselves, for your families. And so before we get out of here, would you like for the Safe Here family to be able to find you on social media?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Live Only by Love.
Okay.
Wonderful. And you can find me at IAMENERJI. I am energy.
I am energy, and I am Desi Dion _ on Instagram. That's DESIDIONE _ and thank you again for coming to your Safe Here pod. We'll catch y'all next time.